slice pillow. How cool is this? This is extremely similar as making the emoji pillow from the previous class. And for this one right here, I chose to use flannel. And you can see how I played around with the felt color pieces in the front. Now, when you're designing these pillows, you are actually the designer because you're choosing which felt pieces, colors, and what type of fabrics you want to use. This one I used a plain cotton that's bright and happy with my felt pieces in the front that you can see here I added more colors to. So download that pattern and let's get started. Let's get started with this fruit slice pillow. So I cut out all the pieces that I needed from my pattern that I've designed for you, but I wanted to make a quick note on this first page of the pattern. I created a key for you, and this key is really helpful when you cut out all your fabric and your felt pieces and to know exactly which one goes where, so it's not confusing. So as you can see, each of the details has the letter that coordinates to where you're going to place it on your fabric. So I'll show you that as we get up to it. So what I like to do is when I cut out my pieces, I don't throw this out. I actually keep it with the pieces because it's good for reference. All right, so I'm going to put that aside, and I'm going to make the front and the back of the pillow first. So I've decided to use fabrics that I had left over from other projects and to create a pillow that looks like this. I think this is cool, okay? This is a chambray, which is a super soft, really light denim, and one of my bright, happy prints because that's what I love. All right, so here we go. We always cut our patterns out on the wrong side of the fabric. So I'm going to fold it because our pattern directs us to place this on the fold of the fabric. And notice how I'm using this side of my fabric because I am sure I'm going to have leftover fabric, even if it's just a little, and I can probably use it for a future project that requires a little bit of fabric. And I'm going to pin it in place again against the fold of my fabric. I'm going to pin this guy in place, and then we're going to cut it out. So remember, you have a choice now when cutting. If you want to just cut with your shears all the way around, or if you want to trace it with a pencil and then cut. So what I like doing, you don't have to, but if you find it useful, definitely go for it, is I like to just cut the larger piece of fabric, cut whatever extras you have off, and continue cutting your pattern all the way around. Remember, close your scissors down all the way, and carefully, without cutting the pattern, work your way around the pattern. Sometimes I start on other ends. Whatever is comfortable for you. There's really like no rule here, as long as you do this and cut it out and get yourself a good fruit slice. Now I'm going to repeat the same process on my chambray fabric. So I cut out the front and back of my pillow, or maybe I should say the front and back of my pillow. And this all takes decision-making skills. And it might take you some time to decide, especially when you got to do your felt pieces. So since I am going to make this the front of my pillow, I wanted to pick up some of the colors from the back. So I've decided to use green, which I have to say lime green is my favorite color. And I'm also going to include one slice that's blue, which kind of, I guess, coordinates a bit with the front of the pillow. So now that you have your pieces here, your felt detail pieces, you are going to lay them out onto your felt and cut out exactly as the directions tell you. So this one you need one, and these you need two each. So what I am going to do is lay this one out here. What I like to do, actually, I should say, what I like to do is to actually put them out, lay them out like this, and see where they're going to fit instead of just placing it randomly anywhere. I want to try to make the most of my felt pieces. And as you're doing this, you have to decide which piece. I have to decide which piece do I want to be blue, because for one of these, if I decide it's going to be B that's going to be blue, which I think so, then I only have to cut one of these, not two. So I think I am going to make a B blue. So I think I'm going to start with that. So you pin it in place. And then you cut all around the felt. And what's great about using felt details, and why I decided to use felt details, is because felt does not fray. And it stays really nice and always looks clean. If you want to pick up your felt as you cut, that's absolutely fine. Just make sure you're holding your felt down to your pattern so you don't get a lot of movement. I wouldn't cut the fabric this way because you can make some boo-boos. Okay, so now you're going to follow this method for the rest of your details. And if you have any sticking out pieces like that, you just carefully work your way around it. You want to have a really clean cut with your felt because these are details and they're going to show on the front of the pillow. So if you see here, my tip isn't so rounded. I just go in and I clean it up. Continue that for the rest of your details. So I cut out all the felt details and I placed them where they all belong. And I used my guide to get me there. So just to show you, it's like this was B and I knew to place 2 B's here. All right, so make sure if you're confused, you use this key to guide you. Then as I was doing this, for me, the most difficult, or I shouldn't say difficult, but the most challenging part is deciding color. Because as I was looking at this, I'm thinking, should I add a pink slice in there or maybe just leave this? And I finally decided to leave it blue because I do like the monochromatic look here. So that, again, for me is the most challenging part because sometimes you like so many different ideas, but you always have to choose one. So what I did here is I started placing placing the pins in to keep these still. Now I have really long pins. They're almost 2 inches long, so I don't need that many pins. But if you have shorter straight pins, you might need a few more than, 3, like I'm using, or 2. You decide. Remember, not too many so they don't get in your way. And as you're pinning, you're going to decide if you want to see your stitching marks or if you want your stitching to be part of the decor and look of your pillow. And if you do, then you may want to choose all one color, like all black or all bright or fluorescent pink thread. Or if you don't want to see it, you're going to coordinate your thread colors. I've decided to coordinate. So I have double threaded my needle with my lime green thread, and I'm going to start sewing on all the details. And then when I get to this one, I've decided just for fun, I'm going to leave the lime green just so that it shows. But of course, if I don't want it to show, if I decide differently, I can just change my thread to blue so that it doesn't show. So remember, you're going to always start sewing from the back, okay? Because you don't want the knot to show on the front of your pillow. So you want that knot to be on the back. And you're going to sew around the perimeter of all the details. Just sew around there. Remember, the smaller the stitches, the better. So you're going to try your best to make them 5 or 6 stitches per inch. And make your way around this really relaxing process. I find that when I start sewing like this, sometimes I'll sit in front of the TV or I'll turn on a YouTube movie and I just start watching because I do find it relaxing. So start sewing your details on and I'll see you soon. I'm done sewing on all my felt details and I look at the key and I can tell that it is exactly the same. So now I'm ready to attach the back of the pillow. I'm going to take the back of my pillow and I'm going to face it down so that the right sides are touching each other, directly right on. And I'm going to take my time as I make sure it's even before I start pinning. Meaning if it looks like this, it's no good, okay? You need to actually match it up. And if you did a good cutting job, it matches up easily. Once I have it in place, I'm going to pin. Remember, you only need about 1 pin every hand width apart just to help you measure or have a really good idea on how far apart you need them. I'm not using my hand to measure because I've been doing this for a while and I'm pretty good with visuals and estimating about how many pins I need with distance. So now you're going to start thinking where you're going to leave your opening. And if you remember from my past courses, you never want to leave an opening on a curve when you don't have to. So you have a curve here. I would leave the opening somewhere on top. So taking my pencil, I am going to mark here. You can even do it in the center or on this side. It doesn't matter. An opening wide enough for me to fit my hand in because I want to be able to stuff and get into the corners. And seeing my markings, I know now that I have to sew around the edges about a ½ inch down all the way around the perimeter of the pillow. So I'm going to work my way all the way around 5 to 6 stitches per inch until I get here. Remember, this is your no sew zone. You do not sew here. We need to leave it open for stuffing. I have sewn around the perimeter of my pillow and I left the opening open and I didn't sew there, and I'm going to remove my pins now and I'm going to add the notches just like I added in the emoji pillow or on the emoji pillow. Okay, so just on the curves I'm going to add these notches so that when I flip it around it's a nice curve. It creates a nice curve. Just a few, you don't need too many. Remember, do not get too close to the actual seam or your stitching. Because if you clip it, you're going to have a hole when you turn it around. And you can't really see my stitching because I used a coordinating thread. I continued to use the lime green so that you don't see it. Forgot a pin there. That always seems to happen. Okay, and I work my way around making these little snippets. If the full triangle of the notch doesn't come out, it's okay, as long as it's if it's still attached, I'm saying it's okay as long as you cut it. Okay, just a little slice there. So here's what I wanted to mention. Don't worry about if your pillow on the wrong side is fraying or if you there's like a little bit it doesn't match here. It's fine because it's all going to go on the inside. So now for the fun part always is you're going to turn your pillow right side out. Like I always say, it's like turning something, or especially a t-shirt, right side out that came out of the wash or dryer, or for whatever reason it was turned wrong side out. So you use your hand to get all around the seams to press it all out into this corner. And we have our adorable watermelon slice or fruit slice, really any kind of citrus slice. So what we're going to do now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fold this down because we want to close the opening with a blind stitch. So we need a crease there. Remember, you can do a finger crease, right? You scratch it if you don't have access to an iron. But I love to use the iron because it gives me a cleaner finish and a better crease. I'm going to use my pins without the plastic head. And I'm going to add another pin here. And then I'm going to press, give it a shot of steam, and it is ready for the blind stitch. My pillow because I ironed the open and raw edges in and I have a nice crease. But before I do that and stuff, I want you to make sure, 2 quick notes. I want you to make sure that you push out your rounded corners so they're not stuck in. And also when you're ironing, and if you decide to iron, make sure your iron isn't too hot, because if you place it on top of the felt, it burns so quickly. So make sure if you get your iron on top of the felt, it's at a really low setting. Okay, so let's get started with the stuffing. Small bunches and stuff. Remember the furthest point. So I think this is my furthest point. So I'm going to start stuffing in this corner. And my fingers for these larger pillow really is the best tool. And continue without grabbing too much stuffing at once and just wanting to get it over with too quickly. Because, like I said before, lumpy, bumpy pillows are not that pretty. And continue along. Now that I'm ready for the blind stitch, I wanted to show you if this happens to you, what to do. So I'm trying to keep these together and pin them, but it keeps fighting open. Like the pressure of the stuffing is fighting me. So I know that it's a little too full. So if that happens to you, you're going to have to take some stuffing out and then play around with it and fill up these areas and then try it again. And now I see that there is no more pressure and sort of saying, hey, let me stay open there. And I know it's better and not as full and overstuffed. Sometimes I know you don't want to take out the stuffing, but when you have a blind stitch with a stuffing pushing it open, sometimes it doesn't look its best. So it's better to take out the stuffing. So now I'm going to use my pins to keep just some of the opening closed, not all of it, and I can start my blind stitch. Start my blind stitch, I noticed here that I wanted it to be stuffed more, so I used my chopstick and I'm kind of reaching there and pushing the stuffing over, and I'm filling up the area. So if you have an issue like that, definitely use a chopstick, or you could use shears that are not too sharp to do the same thing. And now, as I've showed you in the past, we are going to blind stitch on the folded over fabric of your opening. So I started on my colorful side, and now I'm going to work my way. I'm going to hide the knot under there, and I'm going to work my way across the street. Sometimes the knot fights you and it wants to stay out. You just push that guy in. Okay, now I'm going to work my way across to the chambray. Remember, blind stitching, you are going to sew on the folded over flat fabric. Don't make your needle go through. So I will stay up towards the crease and I'll pull through. And now I go over to my Happy and Bright fabrics right there. I'll continue a bit closer. So we go through the top, near the crease. Small stitches are best. And then we cross the street, as I always say, to this side. And then we're back at the denim. And we're going to make super sure that we don't go through to the outside of the pillow. So this is what through looks like. If your needle does that, it went through. You want it to stay on the inside panel only and stay up near your crease. And continue until you get to the end. So I'm just about to close my blind stitch, and I'm adding my last stitch on the inside of the yellow fabric or the colorful fabric. And I'm going to remind you how to do the final ending off. I'm going to put the needle through my loop like I just did, and then I'm going to do another stitch, same thing, needle through the loop. And then if you get that sometimes happens, it's okay. I'm kind of glad that happened to mine. I'll show you what to do with it. It's very common. You're going to stick your needle through the seam and give the thread a little tug, and you're going to cut. And if your loop happened, which sometimes happens because it tangles as you sew, you're going to trim. And then using your needle or even a straight pin, you're going to gently press it into the seam of the pillow. And you will get it there, just takes a little patience. Press all those ends into the seam. and no one will ever know it's there. Voila, gone. Okay, so I have to say this pillow came out super adorable. I am loving the colors. I'm even loving the idea and the fact that I decided to go with the monochromatic slice.